Please welcome Coleman.
The captain has asked all passengers to return to their seats and fasten their seat belts. We'll begin our descent into Anchorage, Alaska in just a few minutes. Now I'm in the back in the galley, standing between two really cute stewardesses, and I'm ignoring this announcement because I'm kind of a mini celebrity. I'm showing my Polaroid picture of my girlfriend Shiloh to Blue Hat and No Hat, and they're squealing with delight. One of them asks when I'm going to propose, and I say, well, that's the reason I bought a ticket to Alaska to propose. Shiloh doesn't even know I'm coming and flying. She doesn't even know I'm flying up here. And then No Hat asks me how we met, and I say that she sat beside me in English composition class, and my friend got her phone number, and so I called her message machine, and I sang Michelle by the Beatles into the message machine, except I replaced all the words with I love you. I love you, 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 I love you. And I don't tell them I did that with the last 5 girls I had a crush on, because that's like another story altogether. It didn't work out. But this may be why I'm flying to Alaska at this point. Now, I take out a shell necklace and I tell them that this is what I'm going to give her instead of a ring. And then I take my seat, and as I'm leaving the plane when we land in Anchorage, the captain leans out and he tells me good luck. And I don't know if the stewardesses have told him anything or this is kind of a prophecy, because he knows that I might need luck to find Shiloh, and I might need luck to keep her, and I might need luck to help me through this disaster that my life is going to be for the next year in Alaska. Now when we get to Anchorage, I hop into a smaller plane. It's kind of like a snow cone machine with wings. It doesn't have any seats inside. It's just the pilot and his dog, Boss Chops, who's a golden retriever, sitting in the back. And I hold on to the little canvas strap, and he shuts the door, and we wobble off into the sky. And we're in the sky for about 20 minutes when it actually turns on its side, and I begin talking to Boss Chops like he's my therapist. And I'm screaming over the engine hum, and it's like humming through the airplane. It's like humming into my bones, and I'm telling Boss Chops, I say, you know, when Shiloh climbed into that El Camino with that guy from Canada that she met at the Rainbow Gathering, she was only gone for like 2 days before I like freaked out, and I took my Subaru Brad over to my best friend's house, and I bought a one-way ticket to Alaska. And Boss Chops doesn't even look at me. He just gives a sigh. And when we land on the Kenai Peninsula, the captain unrolls the door, and I follow Boss Chops and the pilot to the terminal, which is only like a little trailer connected to a liquor store. And I go into the liquor store and I buy a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter and a can of sardines and a map, and it comes to like $430. And this is like in 1989. And like, I know my like sock fund. I've taken all my savings and stuck in my socks. It's not gonna last even a month at this point. I go out by the road and I'm looking at the map, and in about 10 minutes this car pulls up, and the Dostoevsky twins are riding in this Dodge Dart, and the driver and his doppelganger, they both have really pointy gray Russian beards, and they're wearing gray seal caps, and they both are sipping from a bottle of Canadian Club, both of them. And the driver looks at me and he says, "Where the fuck are you going?" And I say, "I'm going to Cannery Road." And he goes, "Get the fucking car." And I look down both sides of the road, and it's just like nothing but trees, and I know I could be here probably for like weeks. So I obey, and I get in the car, and they pull up to the liquor store, and they go in, and then they come out, and we take off down the road, and we're driving for about 300 yards when suddenly the car comes to like a complete stop, and I roll over the front seat and I crash into the dashboard, and the doppelganger starts yelling, "Divilmoose, Divilmoose, Divilmoose, Divilmoose," and he jumps into the back seat and he starts sucking on his bottle of Canadian Club like it's a pacifier. And I roll down the window and I look out, and my fear suddenly turns to excitement. There's this huge moose in the middle of the road. It's like as big as an elephant, and on its head like there's like satellite dishes that look like they've been like crashed by comets. There's the antlers are like nothing I've ever seen. He takes up the whole road, and the tines of the antlers touch the evergreen trees on either side, and they're twisted like arthritic fingers. And Dostoevsky just backs up the car, and we drive off the side into the fireweed, the purple fireweed, and it covers the entire car. And I think we're going to roll down the embankment, but he pulls around this devil moose, devil moose. And we keep going. And finally, the devil moose is in the back. And then I exchange seats with the doppelganger. And I'm back in the back seat. And I'm looking at Shiloh's picture. And I'm wondering if this was a good idea at all. And I'm thinking that, you know, it doesn't matter that I tell Shiloh that I love her much more than she tells me. And it doesn't matter that my best friend Mason, who I dropped my Subaru Brad off at his house, it doesn't matter that he says, you know, if she's always running away from you and you're always chasing her, maybe you're not meant to be together. None of that matters. The only thing that matters is the way I feel with her. I feel like more creative, and I feel more free, and I feel much more stronger when I'm around her. In the middle of the night, the Dostoevsky brothers drop me off in a campground. And they pull away. And it's like no campground I've never even been to. There's just like trees everywhere. There's no like picnic tables. There's no sign. It's just like the middle of the woods. I don't have a flashlight. And I remove my book bag from my back. And I take out the ball of the tent that I borrowed. And I spread it out on the ground. I realized for the first time that I've forgotten my poles for my tent. And so I just climb into this cocoon and I go to sleep. The next day I wake up and I begin a ritual that I'll continue for the next month. I'll hitchhike into town and I show my Polaroid picture of Shiloh to ex-cons at grocery stores and ex-cons at the churches and ex-cons at the liquor stores, and they all look at her with this lustful eye that just makes my stomach drop every time I take it out. But by the end of the month, I've used up all the money in my sock fund, so I just stay in the campground and write in my notebook. And then one night, a car pulls up in the middle of the night. The lights from the headlights from the car flash into my little cocoon, and there's a smell of cigarette smoke. And then someone gets out of the car, and then the car pulls away, and Shiloh climbs on top of me. "Where have you been?" I say. "You're crazy." And then she says, "I'm crazy in love with you." And we 69 for the rest of the night, and I forget everything. It's really, really nice. "How did you find me?" I say, and she says she called my parents' house. And then I say, "Where have you been?" And she said that Canada Joe, the driver of the El Camino, well, their car broke down in the Yukon, right near Whitehorse, and they had to stay with his parents' house for a month while the car got fixed. And she's been working for a month up in the cannery up in Cook Inlet. Wow. I'm in love with Shiloh. The next morning, the El Camino comes and picks us up. And Canadian Joe drives us to the cannery. And there to greet us is Glenn Gaffey. He's the head of the cannery. He's the plant manager. And he's on his four-wheeler, and he's wearing an Edmonton Oilers jacket, and his hair is greasy, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he's got a cup of coffee in his hand, and he looks at me, and he calls me Professor, and he winks at Shiloh. And I sense that there's something going on between them that feels a lot like death. My stomach drops, but I don't say anything. He calls me Professor, and he asks me to get on the four-wheeler, and I go with him, and we go up to the cannery building, and he takes me up to the office. And I tell him, I said, "I thought I was here to work with the fish." And he tells me that in Alaska, that if you have a Band-Aid, they make you a doctor. And if you've taken piano lessons, they make you a pianist. And since I was a teacher's aide in my last job, he calls me Professor. He points at the desk where there's a hard hat. He says, "I'm going to wear the hard hat, I'm going to carry the clipboard around, I'm going to make up the rest." "Yeah, but who am I?" I asked sort of existentially. I mean, what am I supposed to do? He says I'm the official liaison between the Occupational Health and Safety Administration in Anchorage and the cannery. And so I work 8-hour days while Shiloh works 72-hour shifts. We fuck, we fight, and we forgive each other, and then we do it all over again, and suddenly we begin to grow further apart. One night, she comes back from her shift, and I wake her up out of her sleep. And I take the shell necklace out of my pocket, and she says, "What's this?" And I put it around her neck, and I said, "It's nothing." And we go back to sleep. And then the next week, I go looking for her, and I can't find her anywhere. I look in the cannery office, I look at the tent, and finally I hear her singing Me and Bobby McGee from Glenn Gaffey's trailer. I walk in, and I can hear her in the bathtub. And I want to stand outside the door and go, "Yo, devil moose, devil moose, devil moose, devil moose." But I don't. I open the door, she calls me sweetie, and it makes all the sadness and that feeling in my stomach just like drop away. She said she wasn't feeling good, and she said that she wanted to just get away from things, and like a dummy, I believed her. 2 days later on my birthday, she disappeared with Glenn Gaffey to Anchorage. And by the end of the week, I transferred onto a tender boat, and that's where I spent the rest of the year, out in Cook Inlet on the sea. my bunkmate, I would tell him the story over and over again of what happened between me and Shiloh. And he told me about the devil moose. And for the first time, I understood why I had taken this trip up there to repair this little blip of a heart that might have fallen off that airplane and disappeared into the Alaskan landscape. He said that moose, a male moose, sheds its antlers once a year. But if a male moose was accidentally castrated in the wild, for whatever reason, that male moose would shed his antlers one more time and then grow a big pair of gnarled, kind of arthritic looking, fisty looking antlers, and he would never lose that pair until the day that he died. And so right before the weather got cold, I bought a one-way ticket back home. And without Shiloh, and without my shell necklace, I felt in some way that story without an ending, that part of that story that was castrated, kind of formed around me like those devil moose antlers and protected my heart from everything that might have been. Thanks.